Zoom record. Okay, so you can get a copy of this afterwards. I also want to send a copy to the 4 or 5 who've not made it because stuff happens. Okay. Plan is to run them every Wednesday from the 29th of December. The plan is to run them for 45 minutes, 20 minutes or so input either from me or somebody else, and then 25 minutes Q&A stroke discussion. So as much as as much as input, I want it to be a discussion and Q&A. If you think anybody you know might be interested, invite them along, but make sure they register. Otherwise, I don't think they can get into the Zoom meeting. And above all, just get involved in the discussion. Either use the chat button or raise your hand and speak up. Why am I doing it? I think there's a bunch of collective wisdom out there that remains a little bit untapped. I think there are lots of people who know a lot of stuff, but the nature of being independent often means that we are, and that we plow our own furrow. We do what we think we can do. We do what works for us. And we could accelerate that so much better if we had an opportunity to meet with and collaborate with other people in a similar position. And with a lot of the online, face-to-face stuff disappearing and potentially maybe disappearing for good, then a regular forum like this may work really well. Gives us an opportunity to share perspectives. It gives us an opportunity to have robust discussions. It gives us an opportunity to collaborate either in approaches we're taking or maybe even after the event in pieces of work. But ultimately, I guess what I'm looking for is for people to get new ideas or even better insights, which will help them seriously to improve their performance in winning the type of work they want at the rates when they want. So that was the purpose behind it. What do I mean by an independent? Some of you may have seen this before, but I've called us independent executives. And the reason I've called us independent executives is because I've listened to far too many discussions about what's the difference between an interim and a consultant to last a lifetime, when I think it's somewhat theoretical and doesn't really matter that much. It certainly doesn't matter to most clients who couldn't tell us the difference if they had a gun to their head. And even if they could, it would probably be different to the next person's along the line. I also, and many of you will have read or read every year the Institute of Interim Management interim report, and you'll see that their people are invited to respond to the questionnaire. But an awful lot of them say, I've done consulting assignments this year. So I tend to think of the majority of us being independent executives, and we will work sometimes looking like an interim manager and sometimes looking like a consultant. And what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, a client has an opportunity that they want to take advantage of, that they want to solve. So here we go, problem or opportunity. Some clients don't know they've got a problem and need to be made aware of it. Some clients don't know they've got an opportunity and need to be made aware of it. Some clients know they've got a problem or opportunity, but they can't put their finger on what it actually is. I've had a client say that to me before. One head of a very large European software company said, I know we've got a problem, I just can't tell you what it is. Some clients know what the problem is, but they don't know why it's stuck. They don't know what's causing it. They don't know why they can't get rid of it. And there needs to be some analysis done there to find out what the root causes of that problem are, or what's holding it in place, or what's stopping them taking advantage of the opportunity. If they've done that work, they then move on to the design work. Okay, we know what the problem is. We know what's causing it. So what are we going to do to fix it? What does a project plan looks like, an implementation plan? What do the milestones look like? What are we going to fix first, second, third, and so on? Putting a solution together to fix it. Next stage is to say, right, okay, we've got a solution, now let's implement it. And that happens surprisingly little. So stuff gets left on shelves and not implemented. But if we're going to either take advantage of the opportunity or get rid of the problem, we need to do implementation. And then we need to hand it over to make it business as usual, the way we do things around here, and continuously improve it. Now, traditionally, I guess, interim management would have started in that final area where somebody has, there is a temporary vacancy on a management team and somebody is needed to fill that temporary vacancy. And it's somebody experienced, it's somebody who's got a steady pair of hands, it's somebody who can keep the ship afloat whilst they recruit a full-time person, hence the word interim. And we see it in, we see it in all areas of life. Football managers, for example, often interim, and often interims are offered the job at the end of it because they do a good job and the client wants them to stay around. Committed interims don't take the job, but there's nothing wrong with taking it if it seems right for you at the time. The next phase, though, is where we've seen the big growth in interim management, which is all about making change happen. So it's about taking stuff from later stage design and delivering it. So getting the results for the client. And we could call those change interim managers. And most research suggests that 80% of interim assignments are around change, be it turnaround, be it rescue, be it project implementation. And then there's this upfront bit, which has often been seen as the realm of consultants who do all the upfront analysis and design. And therein lies some of the challenge, because if you have a different person implementing to designing, and the designing organization doesn't understand implementation, then we have a bit of a problem in the handover. So if any of you worked in manufacturing, it's like a manufacturer saying, somebody on the factory saying, how on earth am I supposed to make that? You didn't design the product with manufacturing in mind, so we've now got huge problems. And that would have happened before when there was a handover between a consultancy and an interim manager. I've had one client slap a great big document on the table and they said, we've had that done by Bain & Co. and we don't have a clue what to do with it. Can you translate it into something that's doable? So then you put that in front of, I guess a lot of you who are experienced working independently, and you may well say, well, actually, I work in all those areas. And I think that's my point, that an independent consultant tends to say, where is the client right now? And what help do they need right now? Have they got a problem, but they can't put the finger on what it is, in which case stage number one is help them put their finger on what the problem is, help them define it. If they've defined it, then the next stage may well be, what's the analysis look like, and so on down the process. My gut feel with most of the people I work with is that they tend to fall into the preferring taking on a role and managing that role, or they tend to prefer making change happen. I'm not saying they can't do both, but there tends to be a preference. So there are people who love change and there are people who are less enthusiastic about transformational change, maybe more incremental change. So when I say independent executive, it's like an umbrella term for people who operate in all stages of that problem-solving process. Where they choose to work is going to be down to personal preference. So let me get on to the heal thyself bit. Many years ago, when I was in corporate life, that's 25 years ago plus, I ran teams that were targeted at certain markets. So they would include salespeople and consultants and technical people. So it would be a team of cross-disciplinary people focused on certain markets. My obsession at the time was understanding clients' business. And it had been for some time. And I would say, somewhat naively, you need to understand the client's business better than they do. Now, I don't believe that any longer. I think one of the benefits of being one of the ways that we can add most value is not because we're really clever, but because we're a bit separate from the client's organization. Once we're not steeped in the detail, it becomes easier to see where the problems are. So stepping back and not being embroiled in it is often infinitely more helpful, but we do need to understand the real important factors about them. What I tended to do was research industries in great depth and encourage the team that worked for me to research them in great depth. And one day I was sitting having lunch with the IT director of Glaxo, who said to me as a wake-up call, he said, I am enormously impressed by the depth of knowledge that you and the team have displayed in the pharmaceutical industry. It's really refreshing to see the interest that you have compared to other sales teams from technology companies. And then he looked at me, he said, however, I haven't got a clue what you do. I don't know what it is that you sell, which was a bit of a wake-up call for somebody who was supposed to be running a business unit. And it struck me that saying we need to understand the business as well as the client wasn't helpful. So I stumbled across a tool, this tool. Now, it's nothing clever about this tool. It's just a combination in a pretty picture of PEST or PESTLE analysis, if you want to have the LE on the end, and Porter's 5 forces. But it seemed to me to get to the nub of what it was we were trying to understand. So if we were targeting a certain market, then we would look at the target market here and we would say, okay, so it's pharmaceuticals. Who are the companies that we're targeting would be second. In that market, what's going on in the world that those organizations work in? What's happening in that world, and how does it impact on their customers, on how they get in front of their customers, on who they compete against, newcomers into different technologies or competitors coming into the market, and the supply chain within that market. If I could just capture a few of those key elements of change, then I would start to understand very clearly the threats and opportunities faced by that client. And if I didn't understand them in depth, I at least would continue to look like somebody who cared about their business. I could then take those threats and opportunities, and for each individual client, I could look at where, if I was running that business, I would think that we were well positioned and I would understand the concerns that I have. And I could go to a client armed with those key pieces of information, able to have a conversation at their level. So that seemed like a really good plan. Once I was using it in a meeting with Carl Zeiss, because I used it every time I went to a client meeting. I was using it in a meeting with Carl Zeiss. The director that I was meeting leaned over, because I put that model on an A3 piece of paper, said, what are you doing and how are you, what are you doing? What are you filling out? And I explained to him what it was. He asked me if I would be willing to spend 2 days with his management team in order to populate that diagram, because in his view, he thought every member of the management team had a different view of the organization. Now, who wouldn't do that? I would have done it for nothing. In reality, they paid me. I would have done it for nothing because it gave me an opportunity to identify all of the challenges and opportunities that they faced. The sooner I can get involved in understanding those, the more likely I am to be involved in working on them with them. If I'm the person who helped them uncover it, then I will naturally become the person they will turn to help them resolve it. Or at least I'll be first at the front of the queue. So then I started working with interims. John, probably back in 2007 was probably one of the first ones I ever ran. And I may well have used that tool. I don't know. But I certainly put it up in one of the very early sessions and said, look, when you go independent, stop thinking of yourself as an individual looking for work and start thinking of yourself as a limited company looking for clients. And for some reason, with an awful lot of people, that really ignited a different way of seeing things, a different mindset. And if we are a limited company, then what markets are we going to be targeting? And what are we going to be offering to them? Would be the two key questions. And the chances are we're going to bounce between those two, because who we think we're targeting may be exactly right. We may have, but it may need to change. So if you look at the last year and a half or so, those people who change their propositions are infinitely more likely to have succeeded in winning assignments than those who kept them the same. Fairly obviously. Those who position themselves prior to that and perhaps now against the challenges created by Brexit, for example, are going to be more likely to win assignments. So we need to change our value propositions based on the challenges the market's facing. And I know that sounds like a statement of the obvious, But if I look at people's, for example, LinkedIn profiles and posts, I don't often see that reflected. So what are the changes going on in the world around me? There are stuff that affects my business, you know, things like IR35, obviously, stuff like that. But there are, more importantly, things that affects my target markets. What are those things that affect my target market? How do they affect my routes to market? How do they affect competition and the structure of competition? How do they affect the people that I may need to support me in my business? And then taking that, therefore, what do I need to change in terms of my positioning, in terms of my brand, in terms of my value propositions, in terms of the way I market myself, in terms of the collateral that I put out there to create market awareness. So for me, it's sort of become a practice that relatively periodically, at least every 6 months, and sometimes more if something major happens up here, I'll sit down with that diagram and say, what does it mean to me? Sometimes I get a bit stuck and I'm too embroiled in it, and I call somebody in and say, grill me on this, will you? Because sometimes I need that outside perspective to hold me accountable and ask the right questions and dig deeper. Sometimes it's perfectly all right and I'm comfortable doing it on my own. So from that, I can then say, okay, looking forward over the next 6 months to a year, what are the threats and opportunities in my market? What do I need to bolster up? And what am I pretty comfortable with at the moment? So there are certain elements that I may need to develop myself on. There are certain things I may need to learn in order to be more valuable to my marketplace in the future. Yeah. If my market is, so for example, one of the some of the organizations I work with at the moment are in manufacturing. Some of them are European-based European manufacturers, then clearly Brexit and supply chain is going to be a big deal for them. So I'd better start brushing up on what it is, how the problem manifests itself, if I'm going to be able to approach those in a way that they get it. Fundamentally, I guess everybody likes to deal with a specialist. They like to know that the person that they're going to give the assignment to is going to hit the ground running. And if they're going to hit the ground running, you want to know that they are abreast of the sort of challenges you face. So, so pretty much that's it. That's it for input. That's the tool that I've found works really well for me and has worked really well for a lot of my clients. You may be able to take that and adjust it, amend it, improve it. But I really, really encourage you to step back and say, if finding an assignment is a challenge at the moment, or you tend to have gaps longer than you want between assignments, or you can't enjoy the gap between assignments because you have to go out and market like crazy. One guy said to me, between assignments is more stressful than being on assignment, which is a massive shame, I think, because one of the attractions for people coming into this this way of life is to have those gaps and maybe go off traveling for a month or so between, or whatever it may be. It's a great shame if all you do is run around like a blue ass fly, going to networking meetings that never really generate any business. So so I'm going to leave it at that. I'll stop sharing and I'll say, open the floor up. Do you use something like that? Those who are experienced, what do you do to work on your business, stay on track and make sure you're heading in the right direction?
Hi, my name's Gary. Yeah, that was really, hi, thank you, Simon. It's interesting. I do use a model like that when I'm with clients, but the idea of turning it and using it to look at me, no, I've not done. Right. What I do tend to do, I think you said, you know, either you'll spend quite a lot of time thinking about target market or about the proposition. So yeah, at various times I've looked again at what's going on in financial services, that and what are the sorts of problems that I think I can help with, but most importantly, how do I communicate that through the emails I send, the CV, my list of case studies? how do I tune that to better look at the issues that are at hand? But as I was listening to you, I did think, and there's more I definitely can do. I did think, actually, I had thought a bit about the world changing around me, and then looking at skills. So done a lot more around agile and lean ways of working.
Yeah.
Because that's happening.
Yes.
I've looked at my CV and the examples in there and orientated it much more towards digital transformation, digital change.
Right.
And what I'd seen as being quite a lean 6 months, actually, when I looked at it, a lot of it was around that digital transformation. So it wasn't as lean as I thought. Yeah. And then a lot around online facilitation, workshops. So I've done courses to help me, be better suited to do online workshops. But it was really stimulating, and there's a lot more I can do. To think about the routes to market, and are the decision makers I'm approaching still the decision makers, and are they? Do they own the biggest problems? And I think I need to get that little tool out and have a good old think.
I think that's, in a way, it's where, in a way, if you've had a successful career, it's where your strength lies, being able to help clients see it. And it isn't unusual, but it's interesting that you mentioned things like agile, those buzzwords, and digital transformation. And for some, they are buzzwords, but they're really important buzzwords. So, I would imagine that digital transformation, if you've been working in that space, there are people who say, or people who think they're doing digital transformation and actually they're building a website, or they're putting some e-commerce capability on their website. There are others who are doing what you might call genuine digital transformation, which is fundamentally changing how the organization operates. But it's lumped under digital transformation. If that buzzword isn't in your profile somewhere, you're not going to get found. If it's not in your brand somewhere, you're not going to get found. So, it's great to see what you've been doing. And I think if ever there was a time for people rapidly sitting down and saying, how do I need to do things differently, and how do I need to position, then it's now. One of the first guys, an interim guy, he was, I think he was from Venezuela. He was a Venezuelan guy who lived in Spain and was interim CEO of a vodka company in Poland. How about that then? He took over the vodka company just before the pandemic. And I think, quite strangely, vodka sales went through the floor when the pandemic started in Poland. Now, I don't know why, but they did. So he suddenly found himself as an interim CEO, overseeing a massive business shortfall. So what does he do? And it was very early on, so there was no real precedent for this. He said, what do I do with these vats of 100% alcohol that nobody wants to buy? No, nobody wants me to turn into vodka and buy. Obvious answer.
Drink it.
Drink. Give it away. Yeah. Hand sanitizer. Yeah. Now, it sort of seems a statement of the obvious at the moment. At the time, it was incredibly innovative. I'm not going to make vodka, I'm going to make hand sanitizer. And his year, the year he ran that business, he's now left, the year he ran that business was the most successful financial year that business has ever had. Making hand sanitizer was infinitely more profitable than making vodka. Whether or not they continue to do that or they switch back to vodka will totally depend on how agile they are and what the market demands. They may switch back, or they may just carry on being a hand sanitizer company. Who knows? But what a great story very early on of somebody really, really reacting quickly. Thanks, Gary. Great feedback. Anybody else? Yes, Adrian, you're muted, so unmute yourself. Bottom left. There you go.
It's got it, yes.
I tell you what, you're bald as well as me. There's a lot of bald heads being displayed as people look at their Zoom controls to try and work out what to do. Off you go, Adrian.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name's Adrian. Very interesting conversation, very interesting seminar, if that's the right word, Simon. And a lot of the comments that Gary made before, I can sort of identify with that. I'm a long-term sort of contractor, interim, if you like, probably about 18 years or so now. Things have been fairly bare for me over the last couple of years, really. Because of the industry that I work in. I'm in manufacturing engineering, which has obviously been badly hit by COVID. As a double whammy, I was working in the aerospace industry in my last few assignments. Yeah. So again, an area that was particularly badly hit, and I'm not quite sure what that sort of recovery path and trajectory is going to be like over the coming year or so. What I've tried to do is I've tried to sort of position myself more as somebody who's got the general manufacturing experience and try to look at particular areas in manufacturing that I see as being prominent and problematic for the industry, particularly items such as reshoring, which I think is going to be a key one sort of going forward. So I've tried to sort of pitch myself in that sort of direction rather than be the project transformational guy that I was in previous assignments, because that's my sort of background, project management, program management, but also some consultancy work. Some interest, but it just seems at the moment that a lot of clients just seem to be holding back, whether it's sort of decision making, finance, undecided what direction to go in, clients being hit by supply chain problems, shortages, possibly projects are not top of the list of clients at this moment in time. But coming on this morning's meeting, it's made me think that I probably need to get back to basics to a certain extent and just look at the model and look at what I am, what I can do, and try to do more of what I'm not really good at, which is actually marketing myself and putting myself out there. I've done quite a bit on LinkedIn and got a wide network from LinkedIn, but suffice to say that at this moment in time, it hasn't really developed any opportunities. The opportunities that have come forward have been through the standard network and route that I've had for previous assignments, which is basically agency based.
Yeah.
Where they've come to me and offered me opportunities which either have or haven't worked out.
So very much so, your route to market was primarily through interim providers like Russ and Jason's with us today. Yeah. So, interestingly, when I started running these programs, my route to market was the Interim Management Association. It was incredibly easy, and Jason was the chairman at the time. So it was incredibly easy to get in front of a target market, i.e. people coming into interim management. When the IMA was taken over by the REC, and effectively those 35 members went down to about 5, it became not very active, that route to market was gone. Almost, within a very short space of time. And it became incredibly important, if I was going to continue doing this work, to address that route to market issue, similar to what you're facing at the moment. If the route to market isn't getting me in front of people, then I need to have a look at other routes to market. Also, interestingly, projects are being held back, but the problems haven't gone away.
Yeah, correct.
And the problem for a lot of clients, in my view, is not one of implementation. It's one of, what the hell do I focus on? Clarity. Anything we can do to help a client get clarity, the better. Now, I have a favorite. Well, actually, it's something I collaborated with probably 15 people, maybe, I don't know, a few years ago. We would win about £3 million of the business, of fee business per year. And we would, every single time we won a piece of business, we'd say, how do we win that business? And do you know what? The only thing we could come up with in 90% of cases is we met people, we had a cup of coffee, we helped them in any way we could, and we stayed open to what would happen next. And I've always got this image of these people on high streets leaping out and offering you a coffee or a chocolate. Are they offering you a chocolate because you look like you're hungry? No, they're offering you a chocolate because they want you to like the taste of the chocolate and buy some. But they're not telling you how good the chocolate is. They're showing you how good the chocolate. They're giving you it. You try it. When we're looking at, when you're looking at yourself, it's interesting. You said, I need to look at myself and what I do. Yes, but you need to look at your clients and what the problems are. I would start there. Say, where is the client now? What's life like for those people who run the sort of businesses I'm good with? What's life like for them? What are they struggling with? And what can I possibly do to help them? It may be that you're helping them without charging them. But at some point, just like giving the chocolate away, at some point, they're going to bring it to fruition, or you are. They're either going to say, Adrian, this is really, really helpful. Do you want to come on board? Now, they might say, do you want a job? Do you want to come and mentor somebody? Do you want to come and take an interim work delivering it? Or do you want to do a bit of consultancy helping us get our act together for the next stage? You don't know what they're going to offer you next. I would be staying really open to what's offered next. Yeah, I would almost let go of what my previous assignments have been and say, okay, I'll stay open. Let me just find a way of helping these guys. If you're helping them significantly and you know they are, and it's not become a contract, you may well then want to do the sales bit and say, are you finding this really helpful? And if so, perhaps now's the time to turn it into a contract. But all the time, you're creating a brand for yourself, which I think is phenomenally important, which is somebody who cares and somebody who's willing to help.
Okay, yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Anybody else got any comments? Victoria H. Victoria Wishart suddenly looked panic-stricken.
There's not often many Victorias around. So
I know you don't see them. Welcome to two of you, a brace of them. What's the collective noun for Victorias?
Special.
Special. Okay, off you go, Victoria Humphreys.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say thank you. It's really useful. I mean, I'm quite new to this. I ran an ed tech business until last autumn. We were bought out. I was made redundant, the usual story. Mm-hmm. Earlier than expected, have gone into the portfolio career, whatever you want to call it. And I've had a few assignments since kind of Feb, March when I started up on my own. But your comment at the very end of your kind of bit really resonated about, I think it was a client you said was busier between assignments, mm-hmm. on assignments. Mm-hmm. That stage of my career at the moment, as it's still early days, I'm still, searching and building up my reputation. But I think that your grid was brilliant, as I think as Gary said, not just for the clients, but actually for yourself. And that, I'm very much in that back to school mentality this week, from the ed sector. So we all work in that back to school mentality. And September the 1st, it's like, right, okay, I'm going to crack on with it. But it's just really useful, even just listening to what Adrian said as well. I think these kind of workshops, round tables, call them what you want, especially now we're all on Zoom. Really good opportunity just to listen and learn. So yeah, thank you. And it's been really helpful so far.
Great. Let me just draw something up here, which some folk. So here we haven't had a matrix yet, so we should have one, shouldn't we? So here's a matrix. One says, I know what to do. The other says, I don't know what to do. The other says, I'm not doing it. And the other, I'm not taking action. And the other is taking action. There is a stage where we're not sure what to do, but we're doing it. And that means we're being really busy. We're doing loads and loads of things. We're going to loads and loads of workshops, going to loads and loads of networking groups. We're writing loads and loads of posts on LinkedIn. We're doing a bit of everything because we don't really know what to do. And we're being busy, but we're getting nowhere quite quickly. And that's what can happen between assignments. We just do loads of bits of things. Oh, I'll try that. Oh, I'll try that. I'll try that. Sometimes we do it because we need to look busy. We've spent our lives being busy and we need to do things to be busy. There's a friend of mine who's a marketing interim who says, I do work for clients that they pay me for. I do work that'll get me in front of clients, and I know it will. Or I play tennis. So in other words, she said, I don't do anything that isn't either getting paid for or very likely to result in being paid for. So that's one of the traps we can fall into. The other is I don't know and I'm not doing anything, which is usually just sort of stuck. It's sitting there in your home office, not knowing where to go and what to do next. And sometimes we just need a prod from somebody just to give us a clue where to go next. There is knowing what to do and doing it. Fantastic, crack on. It might not happen as quick as you want because clients' sense of urgency is often never as urgent as our own. Yeah, and I think it was the guy who ran McKinsey's had this great phrase, let the clouds unfold. Sometimes the last thing you want to do is let the clouds unfold, but trying to push a client is likely to repel them rather than attract them. Yeah. And then there's this really interesting one here, I think, which is I know what to do, but I'm not doing it. I know I need to do more, whatever it is, but I'm not doing it. I know I need to reach out to individual people that I know, but I'm not doing it. I know I need to join more relevant discussion groups and write posts and get him up, but I'm not doing it. I know I need to attend a specific networking group, but I'm not doing it, and so on and so on and so on. Why is it that we're not doing it? We're not doing it because of the stories we tell ourselves. Yeah. So I give an example. You know, should I give up smoking or not? I don't smoke anymore. I gave up, 20 years ago. Should I give up smoking? People might say, well, the evidence suggests that it would probably be a good idea if you do. Yeah, you even look at cigarette packets with pictures of black lungs on it and go, there's a lot of clues around the world that giving up smoking is a good idea. How do I give up then? Well, you stop. Yeah, but how do I stop? Well, the best bet is don't put a cigarette in your mouth and light it. Yeah, but it's not that easy, is it? Well, it is. No, it's not, because I'm addicted. No, you're not. You just think you are. Yeah. So there's a whole load of, well, if I stop, I'll put on loads of weight. Well, if I stop, I won't, and so on and so on and so on. I know what I need to do, but I'm not doing it. Somehow the insight hasn't really happened. Intellectually, I understand what I need to do, but I haven't bought into it yet. And that's what comes from insight. And personally, I believe all change comes from insight. Intellectual understanding never brings about change, only insight brings about change, in my view. So there we're looking for insight. There we're looking to say, hang on a minute, let me just go back to, you know, as I think Jeffrey, I can't remember who said now, Adrian, was it Adrian said, go back to basics. Yeah, say, hang on a minute, what is it that I need to do? And then do it. So there we go. That was the thought. What time is it? 9:44. I'm happy to stay around a little bit longer. If any of you want to, have I stopped sharing screen? Yeah. If any of you want to spend some time one-to-one, again, it's not chargeable. I'm not charging, it's just a free thing. If you want to understand how this sort of stuff applies to you personally, then if you go to the website, which is theindependentexecutive.com, on the right-hand side, you'll see a little button. Let me see if I can find it. No, let's leave it at that. Let me see. Let's have a little look. There it is. If you go to that screen, and then there's a little thing here, which is, can you see that screen? Oops. You see that? Am I sharing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that thing there. So we can spend 45 minutes talking about how this might apply to you and what the specific challenges are. If you fancy doing that, go to that website, theinterimexecutive.com, click book now. I'm not around the next 2 weeks. well, I'm a couple. I think there are a couple of times free next week. Week after, I shall be sunning myself in Italy, which has just had its restrictions lifted. So enormously looking forward to that. But then you'll be able to book a slot if you just want to talk through your own situation, how this might apply to you. Then feel free to book a slot there. Okay. Any other questions, comments, statements, feedback?
No, I'd like to say thank you. It's just nice to have the opportunity to listen in, as Victoria said, and yeah, just because I am right at the start of this. I'm still employed, but just thinking of making that leap, and it is a big leap, isn't it, from the safety net of a regular income? But no, it's good. Really good.
Honestly, it's a change in circumstances. Yeah, it's a bit like stopping smoking in a way. You know,
you save money stopping smoking though, don't you?
Sorry?
You save money when you stop smoking.
Yeah, but it's like any change. It's when it feels right, it's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you suddenly, when I 25 years ago, I was a director of NCR, the computer company, and we'd been bought by AT&T and then sold by AT&T. I just sat at my desk one day and thought, oh my God, I am so bored. I'm going to work for myself. I had no idea what that really meant, but it sounded good. So I went to see the CEO, my boss, and said, I'm going to work for myself. And he said, right, why would you do that? What are you looking for? What can we offer you? And I said, no, honestly, I want to work for myself. Well, what are you going to do? I'm not 100% sure, but I do love transformational change. I do, you know, my responsibility in the company was about making change. I said, I do like that. I do enjoy it. And I'd rather like to do it in a lot of companies. Well, how are you going to, you know, where's the money going to come from? I don't know, but, you know, I'm sure it'll be fine. You know, it was a bit bonkers in a way, but it absolutely felt right. Yeah. If it hadn't felt right, I wouldn't have done it. I would have intellectually said, at some point, I will work for myself. And I'm not saying working for yourself is right or wrong by any means. It's absolutely what suits you at that time. But
Yeah.
when you're ready, you'll do it.
Yeah.
And if you're not ready, you won't. And it doesn't matter, because you can be gainfully employed full-time, or you can gainfully employed independently. It's the work that matters. Do you really enjoy your work and get engaged by it? That's what really matters, I guess.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Simon, can I just make 2 quick comments? Thank you for the presentation. That was great. Sorry, I've got my dog.
Oh, your dogs are still playful.
Emmy, it's cute, but it's a bit annoying. I don't think. I think you mentioned the providers, the you know, provider community. I don't know what the latest stats would be as far as the number of assignments that go through providers versus, you know, through direct means. It's probably still, you know, about 40% through providers and 60%, you know, through an interim zone. When I was an interim, I got most of my assignments myself. I know interims that only get assignments through providers. I know, and it's not because you're more experienced or less experienced. You know, I don't know if there's some trends, but it's the provider community is still important. I mean, I think in the public sector, probably all work goes through providers, 99%. And I know in manufacturing, for example, only, you know, about 10% goes through providers. There's quite a lot of, you know, sectoral differences. But I wouldn't, you know, there are some members of the IMA still, you know, and I think there are still some good members there to target. There's a few on there that I don't think do interim management, though. That they're in the sector group for the IMA. And I just, as my firm, we were 40 years, you know, the first interim provider firm. I think we've just protested and sort of dropped out of it. And maybe it's because of me being pretty stubborn and not being happy with the, you know, the direction of travel and the investment by the REC. So it's almost like we got this parent company and it was good for many years, and then they decided to do a sort of a hostile takeover. And dumb us in with everything, you know, because we're not the same as staffing, and, you know, REC has so many members in the recruitment area, and we don't even think of ourselves as recruitment agencies. And I think that's an important point. When you do talk to providers, you know, you want to work with those that don't think of themselves as agencies and recruiters, think of themselves as you know, providing more professional service and putting very, you know, their experienced, you know, consultants, and putting you into very senior, very important roles. And most of my team, I think almost all of my team, don't come from a recruitment background. So it's, I think that's a differential. So if you're looking at providers, you know, that's important. The IIM has a good list of providers as well to target, but there's no shortcuts. I think it's more fragmented than ever. So I'm saying it's harder than ever to find the right providers. I think there's a lot of Google searching. And I always say, try to really be in bed with 4 or 5 of them, get on the video call, see them, and then register with another 100, you know. And also the job boards are not doing well. And I think exec appointments are going to go out of business. I think the FT are closing them down. We use them religiously. I think LinkedIn is more important by the day. So there's a few tidbits, and I think the final point is, you know, there's huge labor shortages everywhere. I mean, you know, we do more than just interim. You know, we're looking for, you know, 100, 120K, you know, FDs. There's just none available. Down, you know, we know from speaking to clients, they just can't find people. It's not just HGV drivers; they just can't find people. It's a great time, I think, to find a job. I think our area of the market will be more like that in the next 3 to 6 months. I think it'll be much more. But again, it's the roles are changing. You know, you know, we can't find good project managers, can't find good finance people, whereas in other areas there's lots of supply. So I think what I've always learned about interims we work with is that they can really change their CV, they've got a lot of tools in the toolbox and can kind of move them around. I think there's never been a better time, or a more important time, I should say, to refocus those on what the jobs are out there, you know, around digital transformation and business change. And those have always been there, but I think more important than ever versus the sort of more traditional functional. And also that takes you away from IR35, the more specialist project type, you know, type thing. So sorry, I didn't want to hijack and keep everyone too long.
I just want to say, I just want to say that when you're looking at routes to market, the obvious suggestion is you go direct and you go through third parties like interim service providers. There is no reason not to. You have people who only find assignments themselves. You have people who've only found assignments through providers. It's a bell curve. The vast majority, it's a mix of the two. So I wouldn't be suggesting that you bypass them completely. I think they're a great route to market and one that you should look at. The same principles apply, that the demand that is placed on the providers reflects the opportunities and threats that the market's facing. When they look at potential clients off their database or on LinkedIn, they're looking for people with experience in fixing the problems those clients face. So the two are working the same way. An interim provider works in very much the same way as you, as far as marketing is concerned, which is, what are the problems the market's facing and how can we help them fix them? So it's all in sync. When it's working at its best, it's all in sync. If you are agile to change your value proposition, the interim service provider is changing their value proposition, they both start to be in sync with the client and it works really well. But I absolutely would suggest, you know, Adrian, you were talking about that route to market's dried up a little bit. It has, but that's not a reason to let it go. It's a reason to add in a different route, another route to market as well, which is sort of what you were saying. So fantastic. Look, I'm going to draw it to a close now because people are needing to drop off. It's nearly 10 o'clock. Thanks ever so much for coming along. Really great to see you all. I hope you found it valuable. If it's okay, I'll drop you an email and just get a little bit of feedback and see if there's anything, or if you want to proactively email me and say you could do it this way, or it would be better if it was, then that would be brilliant. If not, the next email you'll get from me is telling you about the next one, which is when we start them weekly. And I'm back from my holidays beginning of September, end of September.
We're in Italy, Simon, just out of interest.
Sorry?
We're in Italy, just out of interest.
Just outside, it's Bagno di Lucca, which is just a sort of a fairly quiet part of Tuscany. So nice. It's near Lucca, but 20 minutes from Lucca. So
how's your Italian? Is it fluent yet?
And I bought my house there when
No, I don't think so. No.
I own a pile of rubble in Le Marche, but I've owned that pile of rubble since probably 2007, 2008, and it's still a pile of rubble. At some point, I need to change it into a habitable house, but haven't.
Is that your retirement home then, just out of interest?
I don't know. It's that was sort of the plan, but I don't know if Brexit scuppered that or not. You know, I always fancied spending either going there, for a year or two, or at least spending 3-6 months there a year, and indeed maybe even before I retire. Why not? Why not do?
I always found anywhere, as you know, I spent a lot of time traveling around Europe, and always my maximum in Brexit is quite a small one, really. If you've got money, people like you. If you're going to spend money
in Europe, yeah.
If you're going to spend money, they like you.
Yeah. I have a good old bash in it. My French is all right. My French is pretty good. My German's okay. My Italian's not great. But who needs that when you got Google translators at hand?
Indeed. Thank you very much, Simon.
Fabulous to see you all. Great to see all the very best. And hope to see you in October. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.